To the next item.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to declare a conflict of interest for this item, please.
Okay, we'll declare conflict of interest. Councillor Simpson on item 14.
Big muscle.
Thank you.
Do you want me to leave or to stay?
Have a big muscle fund.
It's up to you, Councillor. Welcome back, Phil. Dave,
Thank you.
would you introduce your team, please? Members, we are not going to have a presentation on this item. I'm going to take it as read. Important work. Dave, are you leading?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, members. I just wanted to introduce our team who've been working on this over the last month since MPI released their consultation document. So with me is Paula Vincent, who has been working for the Natural Environment Strategy Unit, has now moved across to Healthy Waters, so that's an interesting but useful shift. And then to my right is Phil Reid, as you've just heard, and then Jonathan Miles from the biosecurity area. So I'll just let Paula perhaps do a very, very quick one or two sentence overview of the paper, and basically then we'll just open it up to questions.
Good afternoon. So before you've got Auckland Council's draft submission on the MPI's proposed natural environment standard for marine aquaculture. What the standard is really seeking to do is provide some clarity and consistency across New Zealand for the process of reconsenting for established marine farms, and is also introducing measures to take a consistent approach to managing biosecurity risks on farms. So the main proposals are to make restricted discretionary the activity status for reconsenting of an existing marine farm, and that is similar to how we approach it in the unitary plan. For a plain reconsent of an existing farm, they're saying to make that non-notified, which is a little different to how we treat it. And they also cover off several other scenarios, like if you're wanting to make a small alignment to an existing farm and seeking a reconsent for that, or if you're doing a few changes of species in particular circumstances.
Thank you.
Did one of you go on to talk about the biosecurity stuff, or Phil, do you want to talk about any of the other planning aspects?
Well, I might just talk about the notification side of things, actually, just to clarify that for everyone. So, the proposal here is to have non-notification, which essentially removes the choice aspect as part of the assessment when an application comes in. Currently we have the normal planner test which applies.
Say again, Phil?
The normal planner test which applies. So for a restricted discretionary activity for those matters that you've restricted your discretionary to, then you can look at the effects of those to inform your decision on notification, and you're limited to those matters to inform your decision on whether to approve or decline, and you're restricted to those matters to inform your decision on what conditions you apply to mitigate those same effects. So there's that, if you like, cascade of only those matters that you restrict your discretion to, right through to the condition point. Now, as it's currently proposed, the restricted discretionary activity matters are restricted to not include some things that we currently have within our plan, and so therefore they cannot be then considered. So draw your attention to section 5B in the report. So those listed matters which we currently would be able to consider, we would no longer be able to consider for notification, decisions and conditions on reconsenting of farms.
So those are, sorry, just to make it clear, they are the exclusions in paragraph 5.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Phil.
Perhaps Jonathan might have a couple of words about biosecurity.
Yeah, just thanks, Dave. Just in regard to also what Paula was saying with regard to the biosecurity management plans, that they don't address risk of, say, interregional movement of unwanted organisms, and therefore we advocate for a domestic marine pathway plan to address this. And in that, having therefore consistent rules which apply between regions will more effectively reduce risk of marine pest spread, is one our recommendations to this submission. I'm happy to talk on more, but happy to also take questions now too.
Thank you. Further questions, Councillor Walker?
Sure. I'm just looking at our submission, and I agree with the points that you're making. Would it be helpful to give a number of examples? Worst case scenarios, particularly around these, these matters of discretion that they're proposing to take out, and perhaps issues too around biosecurity incursions where something goes wrong and we lose something pretty significant, and generate some context around the dire state of the Hauraki Gulf. I mean, we don't have a lot left, frankly. So just some examples and some contextual information, would that be helpful?
Through the Chair, I think we could probably put a few examples in, and I think one of the things we're highlighting with submission points here is we do feel that some of the aspects of ecological value do need to be considered, and I think, or more so than what the proposal is, and so that's something we're trying to emphasise here, is that there's for matters of discretion, we think those additional environmental issues should be considered, and we can provide probably one or two other examples to illustrate how that could be a bad thing if it was not done.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Cashmore.
Right, thanks. Very, very quick, Chairman. I don't know much about the marine industry and aquaculture in that sense, but have you spoken to the participants within the industry to get their understanding and how this affects them to inform your submission at all?
Through the Chair, we haven't directly engaged with the aquaculture industry during this process, but there were discussions with the aquaculture industry during the development of the Auckland Unitary Plan, and also through the Sea Change Hauraki Marine Plan development. And so we have a fair sense of their views on things, and they all want to see reconsenting made easier.
And one other example would be the fact that they've had a task force develop this national environmental standard over the last 18 months. So they've actually engaged people in the industry, environmentalists, and also some example regional councils to actually explore how the shape of the NES might look, which has then led to this consultation document. So there's actually been a reasonable amount of acceptance within the aquaculture industry that this is actually a step up from what they've had before. The key issue for people in the industry is that they are going to have a lot of consents expiring in a few years' time, and they would like to see a bit more of a simpler understanding as to how they might transition into the new regime. So that's kind of the advantage for this whole NES. What we're saying, though, is that, and fortunately it's largely aligned with the Auckland Unitary Plan. I think that's a point we need to emphasise. But what we're saying is that there are still nonetheless some issues that we feel that as Auckland Council you should indicate in your reply, your submission, that we think are valuable points to take into account, particularly some of the environmental issues.
Yep, that's fair.
Could I just, through the Chair, add that there is some, we've identified something that was missed within regard to this environmental standard, and that is actually directly working with the industry, with the guys out there with identification of unwanted or marine organisms, because I mean they are and can be a key player with regard to early surveillance, and that was highlighted by myrtle rust coming into the country and picked up through the nursery industry. Same philosophical
There's a parallel there.
opportunity can apply here too, so work with as well.
With waterborne, that's often pretty late.
Jonathan, can you just expand on the risk for council on the biosecurity management plans and the implementation of them? I gather there's a risk of a lag on implementation.
With regard to the biosecurity management plans for each farm, that's through the consent process. That's a requirement. And within regard to the RMA, we can ask as a unitary authority for those plans to be reviewed when this document has been, or the standard has been agreed.
I think the key point here, though, is that the NES was looking for implementation for 2025, and so therefore the lag that we're talking about is that there wasn't exactly the incentive for new consents that were going to be issued post 2025 to have biosecurity plans in place until that date. And what we're suggesting is that MPI and the central government could in fact have an earlier date to help facilitate uptake of addressing biosecurity risks well before that.
Okay, got it. Thank you. No further questions. Councillor Filipino, would you like to move this motion? It really crosses over into your committee as well. And members, one small amendment. Of course, we've struck out the with any required amendments. That's the lead-in to the presentation here today, and included the deputy chairs of the respective committees as well to sign off the final submission. Move, Councillor Filipino?
Yep, definitely.
Can I have a second, please? Councillor Cashmore. Thank you. Discussion, members? There being none, I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, no. And declare that carried. Thank you all. Phil, your whole team? Much appreciated.